Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I am Brian Sonnenstein, one of the publishers and founders of Shadowproof. I'm joined here today by my friend and colleague Kevin, who is reporting on the first day of the trial portion of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange's extradition hearing. I've been following your tweets this morning, Kevin. Seems like we got a little bit to talk about here. Why don't you just kick us off, share some of your first impressions and what you think stands out from today's proceedings?
Yeah, and first, thanks to everyone for following the reporting, which has been going on since about 5 a.m. Eastern time in the United States. So I was very fortunate to be granted remote access. We had a development with the court proceedings where there's somewhere around 40 people who were politicians and or trial observers who had their access revoked. And I understand that there's a possibility that that might be challenged, but there are individual journalists who made an application to the court and asked to be granted remote access. So I've been covering this in the time of COVID. I've been covering this remotely. I'm not in London, but I'm seeing everything that anybody would if they went to London. I have a feed that only journalists can watch and monitor. No public person or no person in the public can watch these proceedings. It's technically prohibited by UK law, and Judge Vanessa Baretzer has no plan that I know of, and I think it's completely improbable that she would allow people to follow what's happening with this trial. So that's where the work that we're doing is critical, and then obviously there's other journalists that are doing coverage as well. The big development for today was that the court heard a request to remove general allegations that were added into this fresh extradition request. Now, the timeline maybe hasn't been so clear to everyone out there, but back in June, on June 24th, there was a press release that went out by the U.S. prosecution, and it let the defense know that there was going to be a new indictment. They had no idea. They learned, just like me, that Julian Assange was going to get a fresh extradition request. Then over time, they struggled to notify Julian Assange, inform him of what was coming down the pike. And it came to August. There was a case management hearing. There was a lot going on about whether they were going to push for an adjournment or not, but they decided to take the route of challenging the fact that this material was included and that the court was even going to allow this extradition request to move forward with these general allegations. They believe this conduct should not be there because it's too late. And it had been the defense's understanding that the allegations in the indictment were all about Chelsea Manning, those disclosures to WikiLeaks that everybody knows. We're talking about collateral murder video, the Afghan war logs, the Iraq war logs, the state embassy cables, the Guantanamo files, those very high profile disclosures. It was their understanding that this was what they would need to prove was criminal in order to get him extradited. It now appears, if you listen to the defense, that they think there's general allegations that have been added into this new document that basically makes it such that if the court wanted to, they could approve extradition, but still say that WikiLeaks or Julian Assange did nothing wrong when publishing the materials from Chelsea Manning, because there are general allegations that have been put in this indictment that relate to hacking, conspiracy to release classified information, and things that we generally have not focused upon when talking about Julian Assange's case, because it just wasn't central to the extradition request. And so the defense is in this predicament where they now have to prepare a completely new case, or at least that's how they feel. And so then when they were denied, they went to ask for an adjournment, which it appeared that that was something the court was willing to grant. But as has been typical for Judge Vanessa Baretzer, she doesn't like exercising her authority. And so it seems that the time to apply for adjournment was a month ago, and we don't know how long she would have allowed for it. But she doesn't agree that it was reasonable or that it made sense to ask for removing conduct from the third indictment at this stage. And so she denied the request for adjournment. And so this is going to keep going on. And so now we're going to have witnesses brought forward that potentially are going to testify about evidence, and it's going to relate to only, let's say, 70% of the case, because there's another small there's a significant chunk now that the defense team has to go to work on, almost at a snap, in order to get those pieces of evidence together so that they too can, rebut the claims that the government is making about these new general allegations. This involves LulzSec. Some of it involves these allegations that they were recruiting systems administrators, and it goes to the way that they're alleged to have engaged in criminal activity by helping Edward Snowden get out of Hong Kong and go to, he was going to another country. He ended up trapped in Moscow. And so to me, that was the big thing that happened today. That's what day one was all about in the trial portion of these proceedings that have started on September 7th.
Thank you, Kevin. Really appreciate that. If there's anything that comes to mind, what are you anticipating in the next day or for the rest of this week that we have ahead of us?
Yeah, so I'll just add that we didn't get a lot of the testimony out because there were technical difficulties in court, but we have a witness who was on the proverbial stand testifying via video, because this is the era of COVID, and so this is how we're doing it. He's stateside. His name is Mark Feldstein. He's a professor who has specialized in broadcast journalism. He knows journalism history from the past to the present. And so he was going over how regular and routine it is for leaks to be published, how many cases there's been where the president has prosecuted journalists, how presidents have put journalists on political enemies lists, but never brought grand juries into the mix and used it to charge and prosecute journalists. And so this is important context. This war on journalism is something that the defense feels it should focus on in order to make it clear to the judge that what is happening is a political case, is a political prosecution against Julian Assange. So we're going to hear more from him. There's another witness that will come forward in the morning. I don't know how quickly we're going to move through these witnesses. There may be a fair amount of people who are Americans, and because of the time difference, you have to wait until 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning to bring those American witnesses in. And so then you're almost at the end of the day in the UK for these. So I think that's partly why you have proceedings here that are expected to unfold over the next 3 to 4 weeks, because you're dealing with the time zone difference. So that's something to keep in mind here. Assange was brought into the courtroom. I was able to get a glance at him and then see how he appeared to be doing in the back room. I didn't notice anything all that different. We went through the formalities that you had to go through because there was this new, fresh extradition request. I don't think there's much to make of it. I will put this on your radar that I don't think everything that is brought forward by the defense has to be done with the guarantee that they're going to win and get a favorable ruling. They are looking ahead to the appeals, just as the government would be if they were struggling to make their case before this judge. And so I figure that what we just saw happen today with the denial of the adjournment, with the rejection of the request to remove conduct from the extradition request, that those are two things that have now gone into a list of a number of examples of alleged abuses that are going to be brought up in an appeal, which we know is a virtual certainty no matter what unfolds over the next 3 weeks.
Thank you. I think that was very helpful and concise. I just wanted to encourage folks, to check out the post from Shadowproof earlier last week that kind of runs down what proceedings you're covering here. I want to encourage people to follow you on Twitter, where you are live tweeting at the break of dawn every day now.
Yes.
Twitter.com/Gosztola. Any final thoughts or anything else you wanted to run down while we wind down here?
Yeah, no, I'm going to go put together a report. There'll be something up at Shadowproof, and I'm also going to send this out to everyone who's a subscriber of the Dissenter newsletter. And just so you know my plan, if you're trying to follow my reporting, if you're a subscriber of the newsletter, I plan to send out my daily reports to people who are subscribers and post it to the shadowproof.com website. So those will be the two ways to get it. It'll always be there at Shadowproof. It'll also be up at the Dissenter newsletter. You can get it in your inbox, so you don't have to go check to see if it's there. You'll get an email. You'll know right away that my report on what happened today in Julian Assange's trial, the trial portion of the extradition, you'll know that report is posted. I did an interview with Barry Pollock, who is the U.S. lawyer for Julian Assange. That's been doing quite well. If you haven't read it yet, that should help catch you up on some of the basic issues. And there also was a piece that we ran on Friday of last week that laid out what we expect to happen over the next 3 to 4 weeks. And so if you're trying to get an idea of where this is all going, we won't be dealing with these bizarre, outstanding, and awkward abuses of process tomorrow. Those will be all sorted out. We'll just be hearing from witnesses. And the one thing that might be a bit hard to follow or a little bit harder in reporting is that the witness statements that are being taken are not necessarily going to be read in court. So in order to get a fuller understanding of why the defense is bringing forward this material, we may have to come back to it later in order to stay on top of what is happening with court. There may be time a month or two from now to come and revisit what these witnesses have presented in full, because there's a lot there. And the judge has decided that she doesn't want to hear them explain it or dig into those details, that she just wants the cross-examination of figuring out if they're credible witnesses or not, and allowing this back and forth over their knowledge of the material. And so that is, to some extent, I think, a loss for the press, because we're not going to just get a to B presentation of what these witnesses have to say. In some cases, it's going to be all over the place, with them just trying to make sure that the credibility of the witness is acceptable to Judge Vanessa Baretzer and to the prosecution, although I don't think they have much leeway to challenge and prevent the defense from bringing witnesses forward. They certainly today were suggesting that there are a number of people on the list who they do not feel are experts. And they just, their insistence is that if they were in the United States, I believe that they would challenge them and they would not be granted, they would not be qualified as expert witnesses during Julian Assange's trial. So, but I don't think it really matters in the extradition hearing that we are going through. So again, thank you all for following the reporting. The live updates are in the early morning on Twitter, and then and then we do this, and then there'll be a report at shadowproof.com.
I just wanted to add really quickly for the folks who are still watching and who are saying that we have a lot of people commenting and saying, thank you, Kevin, for your wonderful work. I just wanted to remind people that there's no such thing as free lunch. Kevin is doing a lot of work here. And like I said, he's waking up at the crack of dawn. You can support his coverage by going to shadowproof.com/donate, chipping in a few dollars. It really helps Kevin stay on top of this story. And there's a lot of other publications out there with far more resources and far more personnel that are not covering this even at all, much less, as much as they should be. So again, please, if you are appreciative of Kevin's reporting like I am, please go to shadowproof.com/donate and chip in to make sure that we can keep them there. Kevin, thank you so much. And we will talk to you tomorrow. Get some rest.